Hey everybody, it's Charles, your hobby hero, and today we're going to be looking at the concept of the junk slab era and why I do not think that we are in for a price plummet on our graded Pokemon cards. But before we get started, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button down at the bottom. I do appreciate it, and if you appreciate getting content about the Pokemon hobby, I do content regularly in addition to some live openings. I'm also available on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter if you want to follow me there to get updates there as well. So having said that, let's go ahead and jump right in. So for you, those of you not familiar with the expression the junk slab era, it's a throwback to the junk wax era of sports cards back in the late 80s, early 90s, where basically suppliers were jumping on this craze, the sports card craze, for people collecting, thinking that their values were going to be worth tens of thousands of dollars in the future. But because the supply was so plentiful and basically just printing to support the craze, none of the stuff ever was rare. People who were speculating on this stuff never had an audience to sell to because anybody could go find really any card that they wanted to. Now, to transpose that, what we have right now, Pokemon obviously is a super hot hobby. And there's this new rush to have graded cards, to have a professional company come in and evaluate your cards, slap it in a slab, with a professional signature of approval on there saying this card is in this condition so that it can provide that buyer confidence that's out there. And it's happening at such a highly elevated rate right now that a lot of people are speculating that this market is going to just bust. And there are some reasons why they may think this, which include the fact that we have a backlog right now of millions of cards that are going through the PSA service, CGC service, BGS, SGC, all these companies. There are literally millions of cards that are coming through these facilities to get graded, where prior to that kind of this craze that we're in right now, there were companies like PSA that were reporting that they had just reached their millionth card going through the grading process with all the time they were grading cards prior to 2000 and end of 2019, 2020. So it's a lot of people believe that all these cards are eventually going to hit the market, oversaturating the market, and therefore making it to where it won't be profitable for any of these cards to be out there because there will just be too many cards to select from, which will have a race to the bottom, which will cause the market to collapse and have these cards really have no value whatsoever for those individual investors that are out there that are hoarding these cards out. So I want to kind of look at why I don't believe that is going to be the case, how it's different from the sports card crash, so to speak, of the 1980s, 1990s, and why I think that there will always be a place for margins inside of graded cards. Now, the first thing I want to look at is why it's different. Why is it different from the sports card era? So in the sports card era, the problem with it was nothing was collectible. Nothing held value because nothing was rare. When it comes to collectibles of any sort, it has to be rare in order to drive a premium. Like, you have to have something that is hard to get or harder to get or in high enough demand that it doesn't matter how many copies are out there, people will continue to go for it. And that just wasn't there. Even with the top players of that era, their cards were very common. Now, sports cards has adjusted to this kind of phenomenon and put higher rarity, higher chase, numbered cards, autograph cards, special, very limited low print run cards, so that if you're a casual collector and you want to get a card of your favorite baseball, basketball, or football player, it's still fairly easy to get. But if you want those super rare versions of the card, there's a higher premium on there. So why is that different from what we're looking at right now? Well, Pokemon already does something similar to that for the individual cards, but the slabs themselves are a service. And I'll kind of tell you what I mean by that and kind of go into depth on this. So when you get a card graded, it's not just as simple as black and white of like, this is the same card that we have on there. That's why there's a premium for it. And there's a lot that goes into that, and I think this is where a lot of these professional Pokemon investors and YouTubers and people in the industry, where their disconnect is. They see the process, they understand the process, they have the knowledge, the accumulated information to make the process very simple, very cost efficient, and very easy. And then for them, they're translating that to a margin that they believe that everyone will understand and get to that same level, and that margin will no longer be viable or exist because everybody will be doing it. So the problem with this comes in the fact that it's not as simple as you may believe. Now, a lot of people throughout history have had opportunities to learn abilities that would make things less expensive for them, etc., easier on them, but they choose not to, whether either by time or lack of effort or lack of initiative. It's just easier for them not to do it. So when it comes to grading cards, you really have to understand a lot in it to make it a profitable business. And when I'm talking about there, like, you have to understand when you look at a card, if that card is going to have a premium when it's graded. For a prime example, a common Pikachu card has a premium right now if it is graded. That is knowledge that you will have if you do enough information and research into the hobby. A common Caterpie, for the most part, does not. Same rarity, same concept, starters from the original 151, but just knowing what those market trends are going to let you know something like that may have a profitable window to get graded versus the other. Condition, and this is something that a lot of people take for granted, and why a lot of people prefer graded cards, because the people aren't trained graders, whether they appear to be or not. Now, I have looked at a number of cards, I've submitted a number of cards, I have a pretty good idea what a card is going to grade. I can still be wrong sometimes, and I understand that. But that is also another skill set or knowledge that I've accumulated along the lines that a lot of people don't have. I've seen people who have called cards near mint or gem mint, and those cards have come back in a 6 with these grading card companies, which is, and most times on modern cards, not a card worth grading to have a profit margin. So again, you have another set of skills and another bit of information that you've got to learn before this is a profitable time period. Another thing is upfront cost. For a lot of the investors and bigger collectors, submitting bulk submissions is not a big deal. Getting 50 cards, 200 cards, whatever that bulk level is for the company we're supplying to, isn't a real issue whenever you're buying tons and tons of cards. But for the average collector, or even the casual collectors that maybe just have a couple cards out of their collection that they want, they're not going to have access to those bulk rates to save that best value for those individuals. And then the last one is research. I mean, really the last one, another area that we're looking at is where to get those cards graded. So there's a lot of companies that are out there. Some drive a premium, some do not. Is this card going to possibly get a PSA 10, or it's going to get a 9.5 or a 9 with a company like CGC or BGS? Can I use a company like GMA and still get a premium for the price that I'm paying per card? Can I use a company like SGC and take advantage of their turnaround times being a little bit lower? Is it testing a relatively unknown company like HGA going to be able to produce a profit margin on the other side? This is all information that you have to learn. You have to go through research or trial and error, which is another thing that's going to cut into a lot of these margins. And then the last really piece of this is the overall cost to do it, and time. Do these people have the upfront money to send off these bulk orders? And if not, or if they do they have the patience to wait for these cards until they come back in? And if they're trying to do margins, do they have enough equity to survive if the market changes before the cards come back from these grading card companies? So a lot of this goes into it for the people who want to keep the cards. And this is, so unless you're of the mindset that every collector that is out there, both casual or professional or investing level, is going to learn this skill set, there's always going to be a premium for somebody to go out there and do it for them. And then honestly, like I said, those margins may just not be there anyways. When you're talking about maybe a $20 upcharge for a card to be a 9.5 versus a Gem Mint Raw, a lot of times it's just simpler to spend the $20, have it done already, and the card is in your hand. So again, you got to take into the fact that people are most likely not going to learn all the skills and knowledge that they need to do this profitably but there's also going to be a convenience factor to already having it done on something that they want. So those are really the two big factors which I think will always sustain this. Now the other mindset is that people would just stop caring about those graded cards. So if you're of that mindset, is another reason why I don't think it's going anywhere, is I think there's always going to be a premium because people aren't comfortable with their knowledge on conditions of cards. Nobody is going to drop $500,000 on a really minty first edition Shadowless Charizard. They want a company to come in and be professionally grading this card with the big microscopes, with the lights, with all the counterfeit detection technology that they can possibly get. There's always going to be, in my opinion, a desire to know with certainty that something is in a certain condition, and that is always going to add a certain premium. On top of the fact, there's a lot of people who just like the way these slabs look. So you have this market of, I think you always have a market of people who want certainty in a grade. You also have a market that I think you're always going to have of people who just like the way they display and the way they look in the case. And then you couple that with the fact that I don't believe there will ever be a time where 100% of the people, or even a large percentage of the people who are in these categories, are willing to learn and put in the time and effort to be able to do it for themselves. Especially with a lot of times, it's only a handful of cards these individuals will ever want. So those two things combined really make me very confident in the future of these price premiums for graded cards. Now, having said that, what I do see happening with the advanced, or just the pure number and volume of cards that will be coming out, is I do see the consumers becoming more educated just through osmosis, basically being exposed to all these graded cards, seeing how many are there, seeing kind of the subtle differences between a PSA 10 and a CGC 10 and a strong PSA 10 and a weak PSA 10. They're just going to start seeing this thing just because they're going to be exposed to it so much more. Whereas in the past, a casual individual may never see a graded card. I don't remember the first time I ever even saw a graded card in any of the local shops I was going to, but now you start seeing them in the cabinet already. So you have casual people who are buying them and then selling them to shops. So there's a lot more exposure to them, so the people are going to naturally learn more about them just from being around them. Now this is going to cause, I think, people to be much more scrupulous on what they're buying, looking for more aggressive deals, better offers, being able to identify those weak and strong graded cards and paying a premium for stronger ones and paying less of a premium for the weaker ones. I think you're also going to see a close in the gap of raw versions of cards and the graded versions of the cards. I think your really strong condition mint cards, people are going to start to develop a little bit of an eye for those and know what they're worth in the graded ones, and either be willing to pay a higher premium on those, or the values of the graded ones are going to come down because people know they can get raw versions of them in about the same condition and be confident enough to not pay that higher premium. So what does that mean for you guys if you are an investor, if you are somebody who's going through the motions trying to build revenue streams and stuff like this? Well, one, I don't think you should be investing in modern slabs to begin with. I think there are very few cards in the modern era that will ever be rare. I think if you're getting into modern cards and you're slabbing modern cards, you're doing it as a service, and that upgrade or premium or charge is that service fee that you're going to do it. You are fronting the cash, you are learning the skill, the trade, the timelines, you're out of pocket and the risk is all on you, and that premium is paying you for those factors. I don't think this is an era of cards that you want to sit on and hold, with the exception of maybe some sealed product, because I don't see it ever being rare. Similar to the wax era cards of baseball cards out there, I don't ever see Hidden Fates Charizards being such a low population of cards that they ever get to that truly epic or high premium amounts just due to time. So I don't know that I would ever advise anybody to be investing heavily in modern cards to begin with. Now, having said that, I think modern cards are an amazing era to be slabbing those cards. Cards that are rare, cards that are popular, people want them, they want to collect them, and again, that service that they're willing to pay a lot of times is a pretty nice return for those who can wait it out. So you've still got some opportunity inside the hobby, inside of modern cards, and inside this process. So in closing, to kind of summarize, like I said, as long as you have people out here that want graded cards, which I think there will always be a market for, there's always going to be a demand for somebody to go ahead and do the work and learn the information for them. So I think we are safe from a market crash on as far as slab cards go. Again, I don't know that I would be sitting on these and holding any of these for a long-term investment, but from a standpoint of somebody who can buy the cards either at a low price or open them from packs because you're opening mass volumes, I think there's always going to be a premium and a return for your work and knowledge put into those cards. So if you got any questions or you disagree with me, make sure you leave a comment down below. If you like these kind of videos, make sure you hit that thumbs up so I can make more videos like this going forward. But until next time, Hobby Hero out.